Hey guys, I wanted to do a kind of a callback to why the pros play. We've been having some decent prize tournaments show up lately, and I wanted to break down some of the builds and talk about, are these builds good? Are these the builds you should be going? Or are these builds just something that these competitive players picked up for this particular game? And we will be starting off with Lakefu. Lakefu has been a competitor for such a long time. She has been on a variety of open division teams. She's been on a variety of competitive teams. And while she didn't ever make her entrance into HEC, she has been a solid support player that has played every single support in the game, but she's also played in other roles as well, including the assassin roles. So let's talk about Lakefu. Let's talk about how she plays Deckard Cain, what you guys can learn from her playstyle of Deckard Cain. She starts off and she stays within the range to get her CDR on her healing potion at all times. You're going to see the CDR is going to be because of that 10 armor. She steps back into range to get that 10 armor back up. Now, she is hiding in the bush a little bit, doing a little bit of scouting. Remember that in competitive play, there's a little bit of a vision game. You need to make sure that you have vision on the enemies and try to avoid vision of, or at least avoid yourself from being in vision. She tries to throw potions in places where people won't accidentally pick them up. She tries to throw them off on the sides where it's a little bit more efficient to drop them down, because if you take like 10 damage and pick up a potion that's supposed to heal for like 370, that's a pretty bad thing. The other thing that she does that's very interesting is when someone starts getting in a rough position, she likes to use that health bar and that armor that she has to try to save them. And it's a really unique playstyle, something that I've never seen before, and something that only Lakefu does when it comes to playing tankier supports like Rhaegar and Deckard. And we're going to turn off chat because it gets a little wild. But so do you see what she's doing? She's using this armor, and Greymane has been shooting at her instead of Garrosh. Now, this is going to allow Garrosh to have more opportunities to get out if the fight starts getting unfavorable, because he's going to have a little bit more health, and she's spreading out the damage a little bit because she has this big health bar. She has this extra 10 armor. She's able to do that, and that's something that I don't see any other supports ever doing. It's certainly a high-level skill that is going to take a lot of practice to know when you can do that and when you can't. I personally wouldn't recommend a lot of the players watching this video that are trying to learn Deckard's playstyle to mimic this, because you need to really understand when that's too much of a risk, and that's something that competitive players know that takes a lot of practice to get into. But if you really like Deckard, feel free to learn that and add that. If you've already mastered everything else about Deckard Cain, throw that into your strategies to make sure that you can bring more to this battle. So in the early portions of the game, Deckard Cain is all about being a utility force. Setting up fights if you can by comboing both of your abilities to set up a route, and at the same time, feel free to auto-attack a little bit. It's not a lot of damage, but it could still be enough. Make sure that you're throwing your healing potions off of cooldown to make sure that you have all 5 out before you actually start playing a little bit more aggressive. But otherwise, that's essentially the early portions of the game for Deckard Cain. We'll be getting into her build as we get a little bit further into the game. Ganking other people is something that you can do on Deckard Cain. I usually recommend Sapphire if you're going to be roaming at all on him, because it makes it easier to land your route. But while I tend to go for Sapphire at level 1, Lakefu is going with a little bit of a different build, and her build is kind of a numbers game, alright? Numbers game is a great style of a build where you're just trying to get the highest numbers possible for your stuff, and this is a build that usually is very good when you are expecting chaotic fights. Because you need to be able to do huge damage numbers and huge healing numbers. So in order to increase her numbers game, right, she's going to be using Field Study at level 1. Field Study means every hero that you hit with Scroll of Sealing increases your spell power by 20% for 16 seconds, up to 40%. Spell power increases healing as well. That means that if she gains this for the next 16 seconds, she will be healing for 20 to 40% more. Following up the numbers game, and again, she will aim her roots in the direction that people need to go. They then get hit by a bunch of stuff. She gets in their way. Reset, all because of her routes that she set up. It was very easy for both Li Ming and Raynor to just finish off everyone. She leads her routes heavily so that if someone needs to run away in that direction, suddenly they have to make a decision, get rooted or run back into the enemy team. In this case, they all got rooted. Now, level 4, she goes with Ruby. I'm not a huge fan of Ruby, but watch, again, Lakefu's strategy is a numbers game. So she goes with Ruby in order to, and again, followed up with a slow, and then a root. Now, Munefor actually gets out of this, and this is actually just because Leon threw him out of the root. If he would have gotten hit by that root, he would have died very quickly, and it would have been over. But the fact that Leon threw it, it's little mistakes that happen here and there, no worries. We already know Leon's an amazing tank player, so small things. Remember, guys, this was the grand finals of the entire tournament, which means that people have some nerves. So she goes with Ruby. Now, Ruby is, on paper, one of the highest healing talents in the game, because let's say that you hit 15 people, you hit 5 people, you're summoning 15 potions that are all going to heal for 329. Look at how much health one person has. That's enough to essentially full heal Deckard like 3 or 4 times. It's an incredible numbers talent, and if you imagine that you're going to have that 40% best case scenario, Field Study means that you can full heal every single person on your team on a single cast of Ruby, which makes this talent extremely valuable in the perfect situations. One of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of it is because oftentimes it drops down potions in places that you don't really want your team to run to. But when you have a tank that you don't really want to have to pay attention to healing anymore, where your tank can go pick those up and then you can throw healing potions in the back line, now your tank's paying attention, picking up a bunch of rubies, and you have that numbers game again, increasing huge amounts of healing numbers very easily. Level 7, she goes with Kanai's Cube. Now, Kanai's Cube reduces the hero damage dealt by 30%. This is great if they have really powerful bruisers that are going to be doing a lot of damage, because you're oftentimes going to be throwing your W and your E at their front line. So strong front line, it's great to mitigate that damage. One of the reasons that it seems like Lakefu might have taken this talent is because that Greymane, because of the Ragnaros. If Greymane jumps in, if Ragnaros jumps in, then what you have essentially is you're reducing a huge portion of the enemy's damage right off the bat. And if Greymane jumps in and has his damage reduced, that means that most likely he's not going to be able to get the kill he was going for. And also, it means that he's likely going to end up dying as well, because he's going to get slowed. So, this is essentially how the early game portion is going to work when you are playing Deckard Cain, especially when going by Lakefu's strategies. Make sure that you have 4 to 5 potions out at all times, so that you're just staying very mana efficient, and you always are regenerating mana. If you're ever at full mana and you don't have 5 potions out, there is a problem. Make sure that your potions are in areas that your team might not accidentally pick them up, but also in a range where they can pick them up as needed. And finally, making sure that you are leading your shots with the Scroll of Sealing to force the enemies into a really impossible situation. Having your W to mitigate damage is also pretty impressive. Again, she just mitigated the damage of almost the entire backline, while at the same time having the possibility of a bunch of potions. She walks forward to tank shots for her team and then gains back all of her life using Ruby. This way she's able to effectively take damage away that would have gone towards hitting Garrosh and likely killing Garrosh, and at the same time she healed back all of that with her own Ruby. She increased her own spell power before picking up all of those rubies, and she was pretty good to go. Level 10. Now, Lakefu has taken both ultimate abilities on Deckard, but from what I've seen anyways, she's preferred to take Stay a While and Listen. Stay a While and Listen is awesome if you have multiple divers in the enemy team, because you can put to sleep a wide fight at the same time as your team will likely only wake up the 1 or 2 people that are actually like right next to them, and you'll sleep the rest of them that are a little too far to wake up. It is one of my favorite talents in the game, not only because it's great at just slowing down a fight and having everyone reevaluate the fight, but its level 20 upgrade is amazing. Now, Lakefu doesn't take that level 20 upgrade, but that is still okay, because she still sees the value in Stay a While and Listen over Lornado in this particular case. Now, we see this fight setting up, something that she stayed on her mount a little bit too long, I would imagine, but at the same time, look at this. How quickly she saw the channel time for the ETC's Mosh, and then she immediately started casting. She repositioned, casted Stay a While, blocking off 2 of the damage dealers and immediately interrupting the ETC, forcing him to get hit by another stun, allowing 1 reset, and allowing her team to set up for another reset with the slows and the roots that she applied. She has her 2 stacks of Field Study for that entire fight, and the Ruby was able to keep the tank healed up during the entire time of the Stay a While and Listen. This entire fight was heavily in favor by by their team because of what Lakefu did right there. So when you are approaching a chaotic fight, always set up with potions ahead of time because you're one of the only healers that can set up a fight ahead of time. Then you should always reposition away from your team so that you can get a good stay while and listen or a good root. Those are really your two things that you should be doing at the start of every fight is setting up potions, repositioning, and being ready to immediately hit a stay a while and listen so that you can lock down and interrupt Mosh Pit, slow down the Tychus and the Greymane, and set up for some good combos for your team. Some heroes that work really well with Deckard are heroes that have delayed abilities because you have so many roots that last for such a long period of time, and you have the sleeps that last for a long period of time. So Li Ming is awesome. Chromie's great. Even something like an Asmodan is okay. I'm not a huge fan of Q-Build Asmodan anymore, so I'm not going to really recommend that one too much. But anything that just forces people to, or anything that really works off of people standing still. And again, this is another one. It got the people in the back, but it also rooted everyone. And that's one of my favorite combos as well, is throwing an E and immediately casting a stay a while. Because your E is after 2.25 seconds, and this is only after 1 second. So people think that they're going to have longer to avoid the root, but they're not, because they're going to fall asleep and then immediately get rooted. Then you can turn this off and then throw whatever you want. It's a really powerful combo, and it's something that a lot of people aren't doing. So I'd highly recommend that. Throw your E, then your R. They'll get rooted into your R, and they'll be good. Level 13, this talent has been buffed so much, it seems so difficult, or so hard not to take this talent, in my opinion. Ever since HGC, this talent has seen so many buffs over and over and over. She takes Super Healing Potion, allowing her potions to heal for effectively 120% more. This comes out to be about 1,000 healing per potion, and it's an extremely powerful way to have very, very efficient heals. And you become one of the best healers in the game as long as your team has the opportunity to wait for those things to increase in size before they pick them up. Because effectively, every 2.5 seconds, because of the cooldown reduction, you will be throwing out a potion that heals for 1,000. And then that's also not including the extra benefits that you can throw out with other stuff as well. It's a very powerful talent, but one thing is, don't get mad at your team for not waiting. If they need a potion, they should be picking up a potion, and that's something that I think Lakefu does really well, is she'll sometimes still just throw people potions just to keep them topped off, and then she'll set up for fights and have the potions going out and having them available to grow as well. So you need a little bit of both. One thing that she does that I'm really bad at, she conserves her mana really well. Have we seen her go back this entire game? No, we haven't. She's been staying pretty full on mana almost this entire time, and I tend to burn out of mana quickly. I will say the majority of the times, if you're running out of mana on Deckard, you're throwing too many W's and E's, and not enough Q's. But I think my problem is that I will always have 5 potions available no matter where we're fighting, even if we end up walking away and a lot of those potions are wasted. She tends to plan it out a little bit better. Once again, did you see how she repositioned for her ult? She threw out a root and a W, which then zoned them out while the ETC was going here, but then she repositioned away from her team so that because the Rainer was here when she started casting, the other two are right here, so ETC would have slid in this direction and then moshed here, and what would have happened is that she would have been there to immediately stop the mosh pit and also interrupt all of these at the same time, which is just an extremely efficient use of her time, and you can see how she does almost every fight about the same. She again sets up with potions, she throws out her W, her E, she repositions and presses R, and it happens almost every single time without question. Now they're chasing down people. She's going to be throwing out Roderick cubes to slow them, to reduce their damage, and to see if she can't get some quick kills. She's going to be throwing potions out on the targets immediately. Again, she's not waiting for them to spawn or to increase in size. She's just throwing them out to keep everyone topped off. People always think that Deckard's like in combat healing is not great, and honestly, it does have its issues. But she just throws potions right on people. She doesn't have to worry about letting them grow at all. Level 16. Level 16, because of her aggressive playstyle, I have seen some people pick up safety numbers here. I've been noticing she's hitting multiples, so scroll of the Stone Curse works. But I personally like Herodric's Staff against Greymane, and Herodric's Staff with her playstyle of aggressively going in and taking hits for her team will allow her to follow up one CC with another CC, which is why I believe, if I remember correctly, this game she does take Herodric's Staff. Oh, she takes Safety in Numbers. This is a tricky talent. I'm not a huge fan of it because it's assuming that your team's getting clustered in groups of 4s. And I'm not a big fan of having your team clustered in groups of 4s. But at the same time, I mean, if it works, it works. You got to remember, we're talking about this build. Is it good? And she's someone who adapts her builds based off the scenarios. So maybe she's just seeing that in the particular scenarios she's been in so often, the only one that's been away from her is the Rainer, because she walks right into the middle of almost everyone. Again, she only repositions to do an ult. She was going to reposition there to do an ult, but then she realized it was just pretty much already got one kill. And I mean, that's been it so far. It's pretty straightforward. She takes the Safety in Numbers benefits here while she's pushing to get the lowered cooldowns and to also get that extra 15 armor we can see right there. So there are times where she certainly benefits from it. There are times where, as an analyst, I'll go through and I'll look at some of these talents to see, was this actually valuable or not? In this case, she is getting a decent amount of value off of it with this cooldown reduction, but is it enough to make it worth taking that talent? Not sure. I'm not going to be doing the analysis on this game because it takes a lot longer than 20-30 minutes. So usually I pause, I'll pull out an Excel sheet, and then I'll look at how much value each thing took and then see at what point it was worth it. Level 16 talents are a little tricky though, because this one increases your damage, this one increases the CC of your team, and this one increases healing. And again, Lakefu's build so far has been a numbers game. Increasing healing, increasing healing, increasing healing, and then once again increasing healing. So I think all she wants to do is, I honestly think that she picked Deckard so that she had CC, but I think that she built him in a way that allowed him to heal at the rate of the enemy Stukov, at the rate of a Lucio, at the rate of any other major main healer. And because that is something that Deckard can fall behind on, is the amount of healing. Now, let's talk about the healing. Again, Stukov, which in my opinion is one of the best healers in the game, because he can heal 4 people for huge portions of their health. She is not only keeping up, she is out healing by about 20,000. Out hero damaging by about 5,000. And siege damage is pretty negligible. But that's a pretty huge lead in healing. And this, again, she went for a healing build, and she is doing exactly that with this build. She's keeping those healing numbers up the entire time, keeping it very, very sustained, really. The majority of her team is staying very high health, and as far as following up with kills, she follows up almost everything with an E or a WER. And I'll talk about the combo a little bit as we get to the end of this video, so that you guys can practice it and replicate that combo for your games. And Thrall, Thrall, I expected to get taken out there, but an amazing ult was able to lock down everyone as Thrall was running away. And that's a great ult to heal people that are trying to run away as well, because the enemies, they're not going to be hitting the enemies, so they stay asleep for much longer. And once again, she gets the value off of the Safety in Numbers, and she's just throwing out potions every time that it's up. Now's the time where you want to throw potions away from people to give them time to charge up, and then you'll be throwing potions in. So during fights, she throws potions directly at people. In between fights, she tends to throw potions out on the sides and then let people pick them up. So as we're approaching level 20s, the talent that she takes at level 20 is Bottomless Flasks. Again, Respect the Elderly is an extremely powerful talent that's amazing for team fights, and it's great for coordinated teams, but she's playing the numbers game, right? She just is going for a build that's going to give her the highest healing amount possible which is why she takes bottomless flasks. During fights, it's going to allow the opportunity for her to drop down 5 potions and for her team to pick them up even if the fight is getting spread out or even if Deckard Cain ends up dying during these fights. But her positioning so far has been phenomenal. She doesn't have a single death, and she hasn't really been hit by anything major that she didn't want to get hit by. She'll purposely take damage for her team to try to mitigate it away from her team when someone on her team is getting hit by a lot of damage. But outside of that, her positioning has avoided pretty much every major CC. And their team did give a warning right there. I believe there were a couple people in that bush, but I might be misremembering games, and that I am. I went through and I rewatched a lot of the CCL games after casting them, so I wanted to double check to see how that was. And once again, got hit by one thing, followed up by a root, gotten taken out, and we have huge potions sitting back here, all refillable, ready for anyone to pick up at any point. Now she's repositioning the potions closer as she's trying to close out this game. So again, by playing a numbers game Deckard build, she is ending off this game 20,000 healing above the enemy support by the time this game's over, about 80,000 healing most likely. Her ult is able to completely block away the enemies, and they are able to close out this game. Several of the fights were decided purely by her play alone, and even some of the fights that they struggled in were she had them set up to win those fights, and then they only lost those because of mistakes from the other members of her team. And these are all really solid members. It's just that, again, this was in the grand finals. Everyone had some nerves. So just things that you have to kind of work out. So I want to go into try mode really quick just to show you guys the combo that she does really well. And it's a combo that I think everyone should introduce into their Deckard play to try to improve. And I'll go over the build one more time just so you guys can see it. So we're going to set the level to 20. And then we are going to remove Malfurion. So she took Field Study to increase the amount of healing that she does. She took Ruby to also increase the amount of healing for the front line. She then took Kanai's Cube to reduce the damage of the enemy front line, followed by taking Stay a While to not only interrupt Mosh Pit, but to also stop the enemy backline from doing damage while her team would kill their front line. Super Healing Potion was taken to increase the amount of healing that she does. Safety in Numbers was taken so that she could throw more potions out, and also more roots were able to be thrown out as well. And finally, she went with Bottomless Flasks to increase the amount of healing that was done. This is a very heavy healing build for Deckard. The combo that you'll want to practice is throwing WER as fast as possible. That way, by the time the root appears and they start seeing where it is, before they have the reaction to dodge, they're going to be slept, and then they're going to be awoken by the root, and it's going to look like this. So they're slept, they can't dodge the root, and then they wake up from the root, and you can follow up with your team afterwards. That will allow them to be essentially CC'd for a little bit longer than 1.5 seconds. And if you're ever curious about how long that actually is, that's on the level of like landing a Ring of Frost, except for it's so much easier to land on this rather than Ring of Frost. And it's also just a very straightforward thing. It's very easy to see when people are going to get hit by this. So it's just a really, really powerful combo that you can do by using your Stay a While. You can also aim it to where some people will stay sleeping if you want certain people to stay sleeping. So let's say, for example, we toggle cooldowns, and I want to show, let's say that we want to root this person in a guaranteed root, and we want their backline to stay asleep. This is why at the beginning of every fight, she would start off the fight, and she would stay near an ally, and then she would get off her Qs, and then she would reposition. She would throw her her W and her E here, and then her ult. She would sleep them so they got hit by the root, and then these guys back here would stay sleeping when she killed the front line. This was an extremely powerful combo that netted her team nearly every team fight that she was in. And that is Lakefu's Deckard build and playstyle. To answer the question of is it good? Well, it's certainly different from the playstyle that we saw during HEC, which was a very coordinated blow-up combo. However, this playstyle is surprisingly good for chaotic fights and allows you to control that chaos a little bit, as well as increasing your healing. So I'm going to say that this build is good. And I'm going to say that Lakefu's playstyle is good. So yes, it is good. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned because we're going to be having a lot of these videos coming up, hopefully for just about every hero in the game. We're going to break down every one of these competitive players' playstyles and see, is it good, or is there another playstyle out there that might be better? And if it is good, is it good at something in particular? For example, this build is going to be awesome for chaotic fights. However, more coordinated teams will find more value out of Sapphire, which guarantees your root without needing to use your ult. And they may find more value out of Potion of Shielding, where the enemy coordinated team is going to be doing more burst damage, and you need to make sure to prevent that burst damage. But in chaotic games, I think this build is awesome, and I think this Lakefu playstyle is going to really up your guys' games. Thank you so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.